What happens when two passionate personalities collide on live television, and neither one is willing to back down? The answer involves a country music legend, a daytime talk show host known for her candid style, and a conversation that spiraled so far out of control that cameras kept rolling while one guest did something almost no one ever does: walk right off the set in the middle of filming. Before we get into exactly what was said that made this whole thing explode, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us whose side you're on after you hear this whole story. Because trust me, you're going to have an opinion. Now let's get into what actually went down. The interview started off normally enough. Kelly Clarkson welcomed Craig Morgan onto her show with her usual warmth and energy. The audience applauded as he walked out, waving to the crowd, settling into the chair across from her with that easygoing smile he's known for. They exchanged pleasantries about his latest music, his tour schedule, and his family. Everything seemed perfectly fine. Kelly complimented his recent album, and Craig thanked her genuinely. The vibe was friendly, comfortable, exactly what you'd expect from a daytime talk show segment. Then Kelly shifted gears. She leaned forward slightly, her expression becoming more serious, more curious. "So, I want to ask you about something," she said, "because I think a lot of people have been really interested in your story, especially your journey before music." Craig nodded, still relaxed, still smiling. "You served in the Army for over 10 years, right? You've been very open about that part of your life." "That's right," Craig said. 10.5 years active duty, then some time in the reserves after that. It was a huge part of who I am." Kelly nodded enthusiastically. "And I think that's incredible. I really do. The discipline, the sacrifice, everything you went through. But I'm curious, and I hope you don't mind me asking this, do you ever look back on that time and think about the complexity of some of the missions, some of the things that happened overseas during those years?" There was a pause. Just a brief one, but you could see something change in Craig's face. The smile didn't disappear entirely, but it shifted, became a little more guarded. "I'm not sure I follow what you're asking," he said carefully. Kelly seemed to sense the shift but pressed forward anyway. "Well, I mean, you served during some really complicated times. There were operations, conflicts, decisions being made at the top that affected a lot of people on the ground. I guess I'm wondering if you ever struggled with the bigger picture of it all. You know, the politics behind the missions." Craig's jaw tightened just slightly. "Kelly, I served my country. I did my job with honor and with pride. Every single person I served with did the same thing. We didn't sit around debating politics. We focused on the mission and on keeping each other safe." "Right, of course," Kelly said quickly. "And I'm not questioning your service or your dedication at all. I just think it's interesting to talk about how soldiers process these things, especially later in life when you have distance from it. Like, do you ever think about the people on the other side, the civilians affected, the families torn apart by these conflicts?" The audience had gone very quiet. You could feel the tension building even through the screen. Craig shifted in his seat, and when he spoke again, his voice was lower, more controlled. "Every soldier thinks about those things, Kelly. Every single one of us carries the weight of what we've seen and what we've done. But what you're asking me right now, in front of all these people, feels less like genuine curiosity and more like you're trying to get me to apologize for serving." Kelly's eyes widened. "No, that's not what I'm doing at all. I'm just trying to have an honest conversation." "An honest conversation," Craig repeated, and there was an edge to his voice now. "See, here's the thing. I've done plenty of interviews where people want to talk about my service, and I'm always happy to do that because I'm proud of it. But there's a difference between asking someone about their experience and asking loaded questions that imply they should feel guilty about it. I don't think my questions were loaded," Kelly said, and now her tone had changed too, becoming more defensive. "I think they were fair questions about a complex subject." "Complex," Craig said, shaking his head slightly. "You know what's complex? Watching your friends die. making split-second decisions that haunt you for the rest of your life. Coming home and trying to readjust to normal life when nothing feels normal anymore. That's complex. What's not complex is the fact that I served honorably, and I don't appreciate being put in a position where I have to defend that. The audience was completely silent now. Kelly looked momentarily thrown, but she recovered quickly. "Craig, I really think you're misunderstanding my intention here." "Am I?" he asked. "Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like you invited me here to talk about music and family, and now we're having a completely different conversation, one that I didn't agree to have." Kelly took a breath, visibly trying to reset the tone. "Okay, I hear you. I'm sorry if it came across the wrong way. Let's maybe approach this differently. You've talked in other interviews about how your military service influenced your music, how it gave you perspective on life and loss and sacrifice. Can we talk about that instead?" Craig looked at her for a long moment, and you could see him weighing whether to let it go or not. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Yeah, we can talk about that." "Great," Kelly said, relief evident in her voice. "So when you write songs about service, about soldiers, about sacrifice, who are you writing them for? Is it for other veterans? Or is it for civilians who might not understand that world?" "I write them for both," Craig said. "I write them because these stories need to be told. Because there are men and women out there who've given everything, and their families deserve to hear songs that honor that. And, yeah, I write them for people who haven't served, because maybe it'll help them understand a little bit of what that life is like." "And do you think," Kelly said, and there was a slight hesitation in her voice, like she knew she was walking into dangerous territory again. "Do you think those songs ever simplify the reality? Like, do they maybe glorify war in a way that doesn't account for all the pain and suffering that comes with it?" Craig's expression hardened immediately. "Are you serious right now?" "I'm just asking," Kelly said. "I mean, country music has a long tradition of military songs, and they're beautiful, but they often focus on the heroism and the sacrifice, without really digging into the trauma, the moral injury, the long-term consequences." "Stop," Craig said, holding up a hand. "Just stop. You're doing it again. You're taking something meaningful, something that comes from a place of genuine respect and love for the people I served with, and you're twisting it into something political." "I'm not twisting anything," Kelly insisted, her voice rising slightly. "I'm trying to have a nuanced conversation about art and responsibility and how we talk about war in this country." "Nuanced," Craig said, and he actually laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Kelly, let me tell you something. When I write a song about a fallen soldier, I'm not thinking about whether it's politically correct enough or whether it satisfies someone's idea of nuance. I'm thinking about that soldier's mom, their spouse, their kids. I'm thinking about making sure their story doesn't get forgotten." "And that's admirable," Kelly said. "But it's also worth examining how those narratives shape public opinion about military action, about foreign policy, about whether we should be sending troops into conflict in the first place." Craig stared at her, and the silence stretched out for what felt like forever. When he finally spoke, his voice was very quiet, very measured. "I came here to promote an album, to talk about music, and maybe share some stories that would connect with people. I didn't come here to be lectured about how I choose to honor the people I served with." "Nobody's lecturing you," Kelly said. "Really?" Craig asked. "Because that's exactly what this feels like." Kelly leaned back in her chair, and you could see her trying to recalibrate, trying to figure out how to get this interview back on track. The audience remained uncomfortably silent, people shifting in their seats, not sure whether to applaud or stay quiet or what the appropriate response even was. "Craig," she said, her voice softer now, more conciliatory. "I think we're talking past each other here. I have nothing but respect for veterans, for what you've done. But I also think it's important to be able to have difficult conversations without anyone feeling attacked. Difficult conversations, Craig repeated. And the way he said it made it clear he wasn't buying what she was selling. Is that what this is? Because it doesn't feel difficult to me, Kelly. It feels insulting. You're sitting here, in your comfortable chair, on your television show, questioning the choices I made when I was willing to die for this country. Do you have any idea how that comes across? Kelly's expression flickered, something between frustration and defensiveness crossing her face. I'm not questioning your choices. I'm questioning the system that puts young men and women in impossible situations and then expects them to come home and act like everything's fine. Then talk about the system, Craig shot back. Talk about veteran support, about health care, about the things that actually matter to the people who served. Don't sit here and imply that the songs I write, the way I choose to remember my brothers and sisters in arms, is somehow part of the problem. That's not what I was implying, Kelly said, but her voice had less conviction now. Isn't it though? Craig asked. You said my songs glorify war. You said they don't account for trauma and suffering. You know what those songs do, Kelly? They give people a way to grieve. They give families a way to feel proud of someone they lost. They give veterans a way to feel seen and heard in a world that mostly just wants them to shut up about their service, unless it's convenient for a talk show segment. That last line landed hard. You could see Kelly flinch slightly, could see the recognition in her eyes that maybe, just maybe, she'd pushed this too far. But she didn't back down. I think that's unfair, she said. I invited you here because I genuinely admire your work and your story. You invited me here, Craig said slowly, because having a veteran on your show makes you look good, because it gives you credibility when you want to have these so-called difficult conversations. But the problem is, you don't actually want to hear what veterans have to say. You want us to fit into whatever narrative you've already decided on. That's not true, Kelly protested. Then prove it, Craig said, his voice rising slightly. Tell me, right now, what you actually think about the military. Not the talking points, not the carefully worded statements that won't offend anyone. What do you really think? Kelly hesitated, and that hesitation told you everything. She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. I think the military is necessary, but I also think we rely on it too much as a country. I think we send people into conflicts that could be resolved through diplomacy, and then we don't take care of them when they come home. Okay, Craig said. So you think I wasted 10 years of my life? No, Kelly said quickly. That's not what I said. It's what you meant, though, Craig insisted. If you think the conflicts were unnecessary, if you think they could have been resolved through diplomacy, then by extension, you think everyone who served in those conflicts was part of something that shouldn't have happened. Kelly shook her head. That's not fair, Craig. You can disagree with a war and still respect the people who fight in it. Can you? Craig asked. Can you really? Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like you're trying to have it both ways. You want to say you support the troops while simultaneously questioning everything they did. I'm not questioning what you did, Kelly said, her voice getting louder now, matching his energy. I'm questioning the decisions made by politicians and generals who sent you there in the first place. But I'm the one sitting in this chair, Craig said. I'm the one you're asking these questions to. Not the politicians, not the generals, me. And you know what? I'm tired of it. I'm tired of being used as a prop for people who want to seem compassionate about veterans, while also making it clear they think we're all either victims or villains. The audience was starting to react now, some people nodding, some looking uncomfortable, some whispering to each other. Kelly noticed, and you could see her awareness of how this was playing, how it would look when it aired or when clips inevitably made their way online. Craig, I don't think you're a victim or a villain. I think you're a human being with a complicated experience that deserves to be discussed with honesty. Honesty, Craig said, shaking his head. You want honesty? Here's some honesty. I've been doing interviews for years, and I can always tell within the first few minutes whether someone actually cares about my story or whether they just want to use it to make whatever point they've already decided to make. And Kelly, I'm sorry, but you're the latter. Kelly's face flushed. That's not fair. Maybe not, Craig admitted, but it's how I feel. And you're the one who wanted to have an honest conversation. There was a long, tense pause. Kelly looked down at her notes, then back up at Craig. When she spoke again, her voice was tight, controlled. You know what? Maybe we should just move on to something else. Let's talk about your tour. No, Craig said. Kelly blinked. No? No? Craig repeated. I don't want to just move on like this didn't happen. You started this conversation, Kelly. You wanted to dig into the complicated stuff. So let's finish it. I don't think that's productive at this point, Kelly said. Productive, Craig said, and that bitter laugh came back. See? There it is again. It's only productive when it's going the way you want it to go. The second I push back, the second I don't give you the answers you're looking for, suddenly it's time to change the subject. That's not what I'm doing, Kelly said. But she sounded less certain now. Then what are you doing? Craig asked. Because I'm genuinely trying to understand. You bring up my service. You question the songs I write. You imply that there's something wrong with how veterans choose to tell their stories. And then, when I try to explain why that's hurtful and reductive, you want to move on to tour dates and album sales. Kelly took a deep breath, visibly trying to compose herself. Craig, I think we've gotten off track here. My intention was never to hurt you or to diminish your service. But you did, Craig said simply. Your intention doesn't really matter if the impact is the same. So what do you want from me? Kelly asked, and there was frustration in her voice now. Real frustration. Do you want an apology? Do you want me to say I was wrong? I want you to understand, Craig said. I want you to understand that when you talk about military service the way you've been talking about it, you're not just having an abstract political discussion. You're talking about real people's lives, real sacrifices, real grief. And maybe, just maybe, you should think about that before you decide to use someone's trauma as a jumping-off point for whatever social commentary you feel like making. The words hung in the air, heavy and accusatory. Kelly's jaw tightened. I don't use people's trauma for social commentary. Don't you? Craig asked. Kelly's eyes narrowed, and for the first time in the interview, you could see her drop the carefully maintained composure, the professional smile, the talk show host persona. What emerged was something rawer, more real. You know what, Craig? I think you came here looking for a fight. I think you walked onto this stage already defensive, already assuming the worst about me and what I was going to ask. Maybe I did, Craig said, not backing down an inch, and maybe I had good reason to. How many times do you think I've sat in chairs like this one and had hosts try to get me to say something controversial about the military? How many times do you think I've had to smile and be polite while someone who's never served tries to tell me what my experience should mean? That's not what I was doing, Kelly insisted, but there was less conviction in her voice than before. Then what were you doing? Craig challenged. Explain it to me. Explain how asking me if my songs glorify war, how questioning whether I've thought about the people on the other side, how bringing up the politics of the missions I was on, explain how any of that was about understanding my experience rather than making your own point. Kelly opened her mouth, then closed it, then tried again. I was trying to create space for a conversation that goes beyond the usual surface level, thank you for your service stuff that we always hear. I was trying to acknowledge that service is complicated, that it's not all heroism and glory, that there's pain and doubt and moral complexity. I know it's complicated, Craig said, his voice getting louder. I lived it. I don't need you to tell me It's complicated. What I need is for you to respect that I've already done the work of processing that complexity, that I've already spent years dealing with the moral weight of what I've seen and done, and that I've found a way to honor it through my music. And I don't need someone who's never been in that position to tell me I'm doing it wrong. I never said you were doing it wrong, Kelly protested. You implied it, Craig shot back. Every single question you asked implied that there's something problematic about how I choose to tell these stories. And you know what the worst part is? You probably think you're being progressive or thoughtful or whatever. You probably think you're one of the good ones who really cares about veterans. But what you're actually doing is making it harder for people like me to share our experiences because we have to constantly defend ourselves against this kind of questioning. The audience was fully engaged now, some people nodding along with Craig, others looking sympathetic toward Kelly, everyone absolutely riveted by how far off the rails this had gone. Kelly's face was flushed, her hands gripping the armrests of her chair. You're putting words in my mouth and intentions in my head that aren't there, Craig. You're so convinced that I'm attacking you that you can't even hear what I'm actually saying. Then say it clearly, Craig demanded. Say exactly what you mean without hiding behind questions and implications. Kelly stared at him for a long moment, and you could see her making a decision, choosing whether to keep playing it safe or to actually engage with what he was asking. Finally, she spoke, her words deliberate and measured. Fine. I think that some of the ways we talk about military service in this country make it harder to have honest conversations about when and why we go to war. I think that wrapping everything in patriotism and heroism and sacrifice sometimes prevents us from asking whether those sacrifices were necessary or whether they could have been avoided. And I think that as artists, as people with platforms, we have a responsibility to think about how our work shapes those conversations. There it is, Craig said, nodding slowly. There's the truth. You think my music is part of the problem. I think all of us, myself included, need to think critically about the messages we put out into the world, Kelly said. Critical thinking, Craig repeated. Is that what you call it when you sit here and question whether songs written to honor dead soldiers are appropriate? Is that what you call it when you suggest that maybe we shouldn't be so quick to celebrate the people who volunteer to protect this country? I never said we shouldn't celebrate them, Kelly said, her voice rising to match his. But celebration and blind acceptance are two different things. Blind acceptance, Craig said, and he actually stood up slightly in his chair before settling back down. You think that's what I'm doing? You think I blindly accept everything about the military, everything about my service, everything about the decisions that were made? I don't know, Kelly said. That's what I was trying to find out. By ambushing me on your show? Craig said. It's not an ambush to ask questions, Kelly countered. It is when the questions are designed to make someone look like they haven't thought things through. Craig said, it is when you frame everything in a way that suggests the only enlightened position is to be skeptical and questioning and critical. And anyone who expresses pride or honor or gratitude must just not understand the full picture. Kelly shook her head firmly. That's not fair. I've been respectful this entire time. Respectful, Craig said, and he laughed again, that same humorless sound. Kelly, respect would have been taking my answers at face value. Respect would have been not treating my service like it's some kind of problematic thing that needs to be examined and deconstructed. Respect would have been understanding that I've already done more thinking about these issues than you can possibly imagine, and that my conclusions might be different from yours, and that's okay. Your conclusions are fine, Kelly said, but that doesn't mean they're beyond discussion. Everything's beyond discussion, Craig said, when the discussion is being had in bad faith. Bad faith? Kelly's voice went up an octave. I invited you onto my show. I promoted your album. I've been trying to have a genuine conversation with you. And you're accusing me of bad faith? Yes, Craig said simply. Because you didn't invite me here to listen to what I have to say. You invited me here to prove whatever point you already decided you wanted to make about the military or about patriotism or about whatever. And when I didn't play along, when I didn't give you the conflicted, tortured veteran narrative you were looking for, you just kept pushing. Kelly's hands were trembling slightly now, whether from anger or frustration or something else. It was hard to tell. You know what, Craig? Maybe you're right. Maybe I did come into this with some preconceived notions. But you came in here with them too. You came in here expecting to be attacked, expecting to be disrespected, and so that's what you saw, even when it wasn't there. It was there, Craig said quietly. It's been there from the moment you shifted from talking about music to talking about the complexity of my missions. It's been there in every carefully worded question that was really just a statement dressed up with a question mark at the end. They sat there, staring at each other, the tension so thick you could practically see it. The audience didn't make a sound. Even the crew seemed frozen, cameras still rolling, capturing every second of this disaster. Kelly took a breath, seemed about to say something, then stopped. Craig watched her, waiting. Finally, Kelly spoke, her voice quieter, but no less tense. So, where do we go from here? Do we just end this interview? Do we pretend this didn't happen and talk about your tour dates? Craig looked at her for a long moment, and you could see something shift in his expression, some final decision being made. I don't think we go anywhere from here, Kelly. I think this interview is over, Craig. Kelly started, but he was already standing up. No, I'm done, he said, reaching up to remove his microphone. I came here in good faith, and I tried to engage with your questions, even when they made me uncomfortable. But I'm not going to sit here and continue to defend my service, my music, and my choices to someone who's clearly already made up their mind about all of it. Kelly stood up too, her professional instincts kicking in, even as the situation spiraled completely out of control. Craig, please. Let's just take a breath here. I've taken plenty of breaths, Craig said, pulling the mic pack from his belt. I've been patient. I've been respectful. But I'm not going to be lectured to on national television about how I should feel about the most important years of my life. Nobody's lecturing you, Kelly said, but even she didn't sound convinced anymore. Yes, you are, Craig said, setting the microphone on his chair. And I'm not interested in it. I'm not interested in being your example of whatever point you're trying to make about military service, or patriotism, or the way country music talks about soldiers. Find someone else for that. The audience gasped as Craig turned away from Kelly and started walking toward the edge of the stage. Kelly called after him, Craig, come on, don't do this. But he didn't stop, didn't turn around, just kept walking. The cameras followed him, capturing every step as he made his way off the stage, past the audience, toward the exit. You could hear people murmuring, whispers spreading through the crowd, everyone trying to process what they'd just witnessed. So, what do you think? Was Kelly out of line with her questions, or was Craig too defensive from the start? Did she cross a line by questioning his music and his service, or was he unwilling to engage with legitimate criticism? Drop a comment below and let us know where you stand. And make sure you hit that subscribe button, because conversations like this